Hi everyone and welcome to Studio Design. My name is Lina and today's video is going to be another episode about polymer clay. Today I want to show you how you can decorate a teacup using polymer clay. So let's get started. Also, if you want to support me and my channel, don't forget to hit the red button, like this video, leave a comment down below, and let's keep going. In today's video, I'm going to show you my way of sculpting the skull of the animal. Also, I'm going to be showing how to make the peonies out of the polymer clay. For today's project, I'm mostly using the white Sculpey clay in the Premo series. I'm also going to be tinting it with the alcohol ink. Also, you can see I'm going to be using some of the green color and some of the like a neutral, almost white color to create the base. What I'm doing first is conditioning and preparing the colors for today's project. I want to create a light pink peonies, and for that I'm using alcohol ink. You also can create the color by mixing the darker like red, darker pink color with the white clay. I'm just making two different tones. One is a little bit lighter, one is a little bit darker. Also, I'm warming up the color I'm going to be using for the base and cutting out the shape. And now it's time to start sculpting the skull. For that, I'm taking the white clay, warming up pretty well, and after that shaping into the sphere. And then I start reducing the size, making it into like a cone shape. And also, as you can see, I've taken like references from the Pinterest to create the skull. Using a caulking ball, I am making the eyes. Then using my craft knife, I'm cutting out like a nose part. And here's how the skull looks like. Now I'm attaching it to the base, adjusting it a little bit, making sure it's all stuck. And now it's time to create the horns. For that I mix some of the translucent white and the regular white clay. Twisted it a little bit just to create the interesting color. Now I'm making the piece into the thicker thread shape and dividing this in half and make sure that two parts are of the same length. And now I'm attaching the wider part to the skull and twisting it and also attaching it to the base. And this is it for now. I'm putting away the skull and it's time to create the peonies. For that, I'm taking two of my pink shades, flooding them on a minimum thickness on my pasta machine. Now I'm using three different sizes of the cutters, and as you can see, they in kind of this like drop petal shape. Also, for the small size cutters, I like to use plastic foil to speed up the process. I'm covering the clay with the foil and then just going over with the cutter. After that, I'm removing the foil. Usually it removes pretty easy. And now I remove the clay excess. And what I'm doing now, it's adding on like a texture for the future petals. For that, I'm using my caulking ball and kind of ripping and squishing the wider edge of the petal. It's supposed to be imperfect, so don't try to make them all equally looking the same or something. It's that what we're going for, to create a more natural looking flower. So I'm doing that with all of the petals. And now I start curving the petals. For that, I'm again using the caulking ball and putting this on a side of my palm, stretching it, making like a circular motion on my palm. And as you can see, the petal starts curling. And I'm doing that with all of the petals. Also, a little tip, if your caulking ball is getting stuck on a clay, you can use either the something like a wet wipe or the water, a little bit of water, before you start doing the circular motion. Make the caulking ball a little bit wet, and then the clay is not gonna get stuck too. And here are all my petals. Now I decided to add a little bit of the darker pink tone. I'm using soft pastels. I scrub a little bit with the knife, and then using the regular brush, I'm applying a little bit on the edges of the petals. And now it's time to create the peony flower. For that, I'm taking a little piece from the leftover scraps. I'm making the piece in a sphere shape, and then I pitch this from one side just for it to easier to hold on it. And I started from the smallest petals, and I'm covering the base with 3 petals. And the first row of petals goes on top of each other. Then again, using the tool, I'm just adjusting them a little bit, adding a little bit of the soft pastels needed, and applying the next layer. The next layer is going to be the medium-sized petals. I'm attaching mostly the bottom of the petal and leaving the top just to be like flexible so I can open up the flower a little bit more. And the third layer of the petals is going to be the largest size. And again, I'm attaching just the bottom to the base, to like the core, and also fixing the flower petals for them to like be a little bit more open. And with peonies, you can do different sizes of the flowers. It's up to you how many layers of the petals you want to make. I just made 1 larger flower, and the rest of the flowers are going to be smaller. I also decided to create the white peonies. For that, I'm doing the same procedure. I'm flattening my piece, cutting out the shapes. Here I decided to make them in a smallest size and just a little bit of the medium petals. Mostly it's going to be just the smallest one. And what I'm doing here, it's a little bit different. I'm covering one of the sizes smaller side to create a little bit of the gradient of the color. And after that, I'm starting again stretching the petals to create the curve. And I'm doing that on a white side, not the one I was coloring, but on the opposite one. Because the white side, that's the side that's gonna go inside and it's not gonna be visible. And the same procedure here, I'm just taking a little bit of the white clay and start touching the flower petals. Start with the 3 on the first layer, and after that, if I want to make it bigger, I'm adding some more of the petals. And when I'm done creating the flowers, I'm going back to my skull. And again, I'm using soft pastels in a darker gray color. And what I'm doing now is applying the gray color almost all over the skull. It's gonna help to create like the shadows and also imperfections on the skull, so it looks more natural. I'm also even using some of the toothbrush and rubbing it over to create the texture. After that, I'm taking the wipe and even adding a little bit more of the alcohol and wiping all of the soft pastels I just applied. And as you can see, The pastels are left just in those imperfections that I was creating. And now it's time to attach all of the peonies to the base. Also for that, I need some of the green leaves, and I'm using the green clay, flatten it again, using the same cutters to create the leaf texture. I'm using some of my silicone molds. They're not necessarily meant to create the green leaf texture. It's from like mostly the different flower petals. But what I need is just like those little folds that's gonna imitate the real leaf texture. Just pressing it in between of the silicone molds, and here's how it looks. Now I start attaching all of the flower and petals to the base. I secured my cup with scraps of the polymer clay so it stays in one place and doesn't move while I'm working on it. And first I'm attaching the green leaves mostly to the bottom. After the leaves are attached, I start attaching the flowers. I start from the bigger pink peonies. I'm going through with an awl, trying not to make a visible hole in the center. I'm going a little bit like on a side into the base we were making, remember? So I'm grabbing by that and then attaching to the base. I'm also adding a little bit of the liquid clay to the bottom of the peony. When all of the flowers are attached, I need to fill up some of the like little spots that look a little bit, you know, naked. It's nothing in there. For that, I'm just taking some of the scraps of the pink clay, forming it into the sphere, and also using some of the leftover green. I'm slicing little tiny triangles and attaching it to the sphere. Push them a little bit all together and inserting into the spots that needs to be filled with something. I don't mention the amount of flowers I'm using just because it really depends on the size and how big the cup is gonna be. But if anything, you can always create more of the flowers if you need to do some add-ons after you like arrange the final design and you think that something is like missing. Also, if you have some of the extra flowers, you can even decorate the plate that's going with the cup. This is how my cup looks before baking. I'm sending it to bake for an hour just to make sure that everything is baked. And here's my baked piece. I let it cool down in the oven. Alright, I'm separating the decor from the cup, mixing epoxy resin. I also sanded a little bit on the surface of the cup and the surface, the back of the design. Now I'm applying the epoxy resin. Secure it in one spot. I'm applying masking tape and leaving it to cure and glue for 24 hours. And here's my final result. As you can see, everything dried out perfect, no leaks or anything. The epoxy resin. Share with me in the comments below if you like this tutorial, if you like my teacup or coffee cup design. Also, if you're following any of my tutorials, don't forget to mention me. I'll really appreciate that. And this is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we see each other in the next video.